makes me feel like a man.
You want every team to lose any other game?
Sorry. Bailey Zappi just put another dime.
You know what? Wait. Time out.
Are you kidding?
That's what I'm
I'm trying to drop a mic.
Welcome to the Warner Brothas Podcast. My name is Kyle. I'm joined, as always, by my brother Keenan. Keenan, what's up? Good to see you.
It's nice to do a few of these direct, live kind of reactions to games, because obviously for us, the Timberwolves game just ended and series is not going how either of us thought it was going to, but otherwise I'm great. Had a great Sunday, Memorial Day weekend's been good so far.
Indeed. I mean, Memorial Day is the unofficial beginning to summer. And look, for us to be nearing the end of the series, both series, Eastern and Western Conference Finals, already on the Sunday of Memorial Day weekend, when we should be entering the heart of a very competitive series, at least on the Western Conference side. Disappointing. Very disappointing. I for sure would have thought in some form or fashion we'd be heading 2-1 going to Denver this coming Tuesday. Instead, we got matching 3-0s with the Celtics likely going to sweep tomorrow.
Yeah, and since we just got done watching it, obviously, let's talk about it. Derek Lively goes out early. He's been killing it the entire series. He's had a good playoff run, but that pick and roll game between them, they decided to finally blitz Luka and Kyrie on those for the majority of the game. It had some effect, more so when Gafford was in, but Lively was picking it apart. And then Ant finally got going in the second half, but really it came down to PJ Washington's going to hit a big shot now. Like, he just seems like the big shot guy. He'll take and make at least one pivotal one. And then Kyrie 12 in the fourth, I believe. And then you got Luka Doncic. So when you got those two who are, in Stan Van Gundy's eyes, the most skilled offensive backcourt we've ever seen, it's hard to win in those situations, especially when Ant's not giving you everything he normally does, and Karl Anthony Towns is back to playing like kitty cat.
Yeah, I mean, let's back up to where we got to this point, which is
absolutely.
Game 1, a knockdown, drag out game. Game 2, obviously, another knockdown, drag out game where it almost feels like the Mavs stole all three games. Game 2, obviously, coming down to the Luka game winner. Game 1 you'll take.
The iconic shot from him now. That's going to be in his highlight bag forever, ever.
For sure. You get, the Mavs steal one in Game 1, that happens. Game 2, like we just said, the game winner. Okay, 2-0, losing both at home, not ideal. You really need Game 3.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah, you got a pretty good game from Anthony Edwards. He especially turned it up after that poster. My God, I mean, that reminded me of Kobe over Dwight Howard, that poster. And then, like you said, Towns didn't play the best. He hasn't been shooting the best from three. I actually like how he played tonight. He did what a lot of players, I think, should do, especially if you're a top 1 or 2 scorer on a team, which is if your shot's not falling, start attacking the rim. And, he got some foul shots, and he was pretty good around the rim. Unfortunately, his shot hasn't fallen at all. Anthony Edwards didn't shoot well from 3 tonight either. And it's hard to win that way. It's very hard to win when you can't get big threes from your main guys. So,
yeah.
Not the series either of us expected, to say the least. I do think Minnesota is going to win Game 4. I think we're getting a Game 5. Be cool if we could get a Game 6 back in Dallas, but I expect this to end in 5, most likely.
Yeah, I would expect it to end in 5 too, but I'm not ruling a sweep off the table. Right now, with how the Mavericks are playing, Luka's a killer, as we know. Kyrie's a killer, and Kyrie is now, I think, 15-0 in closeout games. So, like, when he gets into this position, Kyrie Irving seems to be just the guy on the team of the winning side. So, not that that's the end-all, be-all, obviously, but I know they're going to aim to clinch that at home to celebrate with the Mavs fans. So they're definitely coming out to play a tough 48 minutes, and Jason Kidd has no let up in him either. So that's not going to be I don't think they're going to come out and just be like, we already got what we needed to. But so I think it should go 5. I think the Timberwolves obviously are good enough to get 1, but I'm not shocked if the Mavericks do finish it up on Tuesday.
Yeah, I mean, T-Wolves don't seem like they have quit in them. I think it would be a game like tonight if the Mavs pull it
absolutely.
out. Mavs are going to be tough in crunch time, but I mean, you mentioned them blitzing the pick and roll. That's true, but there was a lot of times they let whoever the switch was, sometimes it was Rudy Gobert, sometimes it was other players, just go one-on-one with Kyrie or Luka. And, you see the Mavs make a concerted effort to get it out of Anthony Edwards' hands. You would expect that, on the T-Wolves side, out of Chris Finch's, his guys, it's shocking to me how well they play defensively against a team I think a lot of us thought was the most efficient offense, consistently the most efficient offense. I think Boston is probably the most explosive offense given the chance, as well as the Pacers.
Yeah.
But the Nuggets, it just seems like they could get whatever they want when they want, and the T-Wolves were able to slow them down. Haven't been able to do that at all with the Mavericks, it seems like. So, I don't know. It's just a shocking, disappointing series all around. Keenan, every year when we do our predictions, whether it's before the series or it's before the playoffs in general, and me and you will have usually probably 3 to 4, 6, 7 game series, and it seems like often like we hardly even get 2. Like it's like I think we've gotten 3 game 7 so far, which is great, but man, it never seems like it lives up to the full potential of long series in the NBA playoffs, whether it's 6 games or 7 games.
Yeah, no, you're right. And one of those game 7s didn't really live up fully because obviously the Knicks were battered and bruised. Jalen Brunson goes out in that game. They go into that game with OG on one leg. Hart has no abdominal. And so, obviously it came to DiVincenzo and Alec Burks in that game. But, we always hope for it because, we think to ourselves, these teams are both 50-win teams, or these teams have great, Anthony Edwards, Karl Anthony Towns, Rudy Gobert, they were the 3 seed for a reason. They got to this point, and you would expect them to be able to at least drag this out to 6, and they could. We saw Boston last year go down 0-3 and then take the Heat to a game 7, so, nothing's off the table, but they're not coming back from it, in my personal opinion. I don't think they're going to do something that's never been done before. And yeah, it's always unfortunate that they don't get as many long series as you would hope for. In this series, though, I think just to give a little bit of analysis kind of on it, I think some of Ant's struggles has been the fact that you have more length at the rim. Really, the only shot blocking threat you had was Aaron Gordon, and then a little bit of Jokic, I guess, but really Aaron Gordon, 6'8", 7-foot wingspan. You've got Derek Lively and Gafford, who have at least 7'2" wingspans, both over 6'10 plus, and better athletes. Well, not than Aaron Gordon, but obviously better than Jokic. So you have more pressure, and they're giving more extended ball pressure on Ant too. And then offensively, when it comes down to that, they have been switching a lot, which is leaving Rudy Gobert on an island with Kyrie or Luka. And then when Luka, obviously, if you're coming off the screen and you either hedge or whatever you do, Luka can get downhill and get you on your back. You're going to be able to throw the lobs to Gafford and to Lively, as we've seen all series. If not, it's a wide open 3 from Derek Jones Jr. or PJ in the corner. So the things that I thought that the Timberwolves are going to be able to stop with the fact that they had a length and guys who could contest on the perimeter defensively, the Mavs have exploited that with the offensive brilliance of Luka and Kyrie. So kudos to them because they've obviously been the driving force of all of it. But you would have hoped for a little bit more out of, at least get the ball out of Luka's hands from the Timberwolves. They have not done that to the extent that you would think. They did it a little bit more today in game 3 in the first half, more so than the second half, but you would assume you wouldn't want Luka to be on an island with Gobert so he can tell you to go home and that you can't guard me.
Look, we knew that Luka was probably going to come out for blood in this series, given how his first 2 series went. He had the numbers, and we've talked about on here how we didn't really think he was as injured as the commentators were making it sound. He was getting to his spots and everything. Now? He just exactly. So, we figured he was going to come out for blood in this series. Kyrie, they won last series against the Thunder with him really taking the series off, it seemed like. And, you forget sometimes that Kyrie has some Rajon Rondo with him. And I truly think he was kind of just saving his energy in case it really did get to like a game 7, for this series ultimately. So I think he was saving himself. You mentioned Lively and the bigs. Their bigs have been great by committee. You even saw it tonight with Lively going out. But Lively looks like the steal of the draft. For him to basically be, okay, only dunks or maybe, an easy finish at the rim off a pick and roll. But on top of that, he's giving you elite rebounding. He's giving you great defense down low, like serviceable defense, especially for someone who's 19, 20 years old. Hasn't missed out all this series. We know that. And again, just being able to provide elite defense on top of that, or at least good enough. I don't want to say elite. He's not in Wemby's category or anything, but good enough defense for someone his age, and definitely at least elite rebounding. That's a steal. That's a steal. And he spaces the floor for you in that pick and roll because he's such a threat. Off the roll, he's going to give you, space for shooters. So, I mean, he fits their offense perfectly. He's going to be a tremendous factor in the finals versus the Celtics. And I'm pissed we didn't see this coming. We didn't, at least I didn't, I want to say I didn't really give great analysis for the Timberwolves winning other than, all right, they beat the Nuggets. They should be the favorite. But this is a favorable matchup for the Nuggets. But this is a favorable matchup for the Mavericks in the fact that, Luka can, like the size and the length of the Timberwolves ain't going to affect him. And now we know, of course, Kyrie just took last series off. So Kyrie's really the difference for me. Anthony Edwards, for me, I think Anthony Edwards is just picking his spots wrong. I don't think he's necessarily playing badly or poorly. I don't think he's really even affected much by the length as much as he's just picking his spots poorly off of when the doubles are coming, when to give it up. I even think his shot selection's okay. It's just not really falling. So disappointing series from him. Bound to happen, I guess. But I do think there's an outside chance this at least gets to 6. I think they win next game. I already said that, but I think you'd get a desperate effort. You should get a desperate effort from them anyway. I would like to have seen them even more desperate tonight, honestly. But hey, I'm just still shocked we're here. Double 3-0s. It just makes no sense.
Yeah, I'm shocked that we're here. I'm honestly shocked a little, like a hair on the other side. Like I thought it could get to that, but the way the 3 games have gone so far, really the first 2, because the third one almost ended that way, but they didn't have Halliburton. So we'll talk about
at least on the other side. At least on the other
makes
side,
more
we have
sense.
we have the Halliburton injury. At least, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
at least we have that.
Absolutely. But to your point, I think Ant is showing his youth in this one, where he's obviously, it's not, as you were saying, it's not the fact that he is picking his spots, it's just when he's doing so. And I feel like there's just times where, like if you're watching the other end, Kyrie picks his spots beautifully. He can tell, okay, things are starting to slip a little bit. Let me go get mine. Let me get into the paint, get other people involved. Like, obviously, Kyrie is a champion. He's been to 3 finals, really played only in 2, but he's been to 3 finals. And obviously, plenty of playoff series. He's been down 3-1. He's been up in series, the favorites going in. So he's played in everything really imaginable that you could play in. So him, and then obviously the one thing that is about Luka, this might be only his second conference finals, but he's really been playing professional basketball since he was 16 and playing in like adult situations and actual like big games, big moments of that nature. So against grown men. So he's another guy who the moment's clearly never going to be too big for him. And not that it's too big for Ant, of course, because like he's not like shrinking or anything like that, but just he's 22 and he's learning. Like Luka's young, but like he's like 33 in brain, like wise, but he's still young. Like Ant's just still learning, and that's fine. This is going to be a great run for him. Getting to the conference finals this young, that's great. That is great for you, and moving forward, we'll see what he can do in the next few years.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because games 1 and 2 really weren't, again, great shooting games from him. You're still getting the rebounding from Ant. You're still getting good playmaking from Ant, especially
he's shown to be a better playmaker than I thought. A little bit better, though.
And
like he makes the right play. Makes the right play.
Right. Right. And, for him and Towns, just again, not to be shooting well. Actually, same thing I said about Tatum the previous series. I think Towns is playing well. He's just not shooting well. So,
Yeah.
when that happens, you really need help from your role players. They haven't really got it. They got a great night from Kyle Anderson tonight. Their best big this entire series, really up until tonight, has been Naz Reid. He can't be your best big out of the trio. They just haven't put it all together for one game like they got 4 times against the Nuggets. So I don't know. It just seems like luck of the draw with them and a make or miss league type of series for the Timberwolves right now. So
last thing I want to ask you real quick before we move on to the Eastern Conference is, how do you feel about Rudy Gobert these playoffs? Because obviously, like in the past, it's been a big thing about him kind of playing his way off the playing his way out of playoff games because of the fact that you switch out. He's obviously did the little twirl with Steph guarding him and things, just like he's naturally played his way off the floor because he can almost become a defensive liability on the outside, even though he's a 4-time Defensive Player of the Year. But how do you feel like his play has been in these playoffs comparatively to other playoffs?
It's been what you'd expect against Kyrie and Luka. I actually think he hasn't played bad on-ball defense against the two of them, honestly. I think they really just need to send help late. You know what I mean? I mean, obviously the Mavs have shooters, but, even if you do send it late and you got someone like PJ Washington in the corner, or if you send it off the right guy, you'd rather have them shooting a late shot than, Luka or Kyrie going one-on-one. So I don't think Gobert has done terrible at all. That gets kind of overblown. Honestly, Draymond's really annoying me. I know we've praised him in the studio, but it's
the same thing to me.
He just goes at Gobert like unnecessarily. Like, it's okay if you think Gobert's an overrated defender, whatever. Like, he's taken shots at Gobert throughout his career, and we know obviously earlier this season he got Gobert in a headlock for no reason. But he'll make Rudy Gobert sound like Joel Prisbilla or someone like that, or just
McGee.
a backup center. JaVale McGee, like that's who he tries to make Rudy Gobert sound like, and that shit's lame at some point. It's cool if you have a rivalry, whatever, but if you're gonna really make this guy who's accomplished and is probably gonna go in the Hall of Fame, make him sound like, and use your platform to make him sound like, a lesser player or a nobody, really, that's just hater shit from him. And he even said last series, talking about Rudy guarding Jokic, like Jokic went the fuck off on Gobert in that game 5, which he could have done to literally Keenan, any center in history. I don't care if that was Hakeem guard him that night. I don't care if it was David Robinson, Wemby, Shaq, whoever.
Draymond.
Jokic would have. Yeah, and Draymond talking about
16 and 16 on Draymond in the one game they played this year.
Yeah, exactly where I was leading to right there. He torched Gobert, but he would have torched anybody that night. And Draymond, I would like Gobert's chances rather than Draymond on Jokic. Draymond's goddamn 6'5", trying to go against Jokic. So, he's the last person to talk. It's getting really annoying. It looks like we're going to lose TNT anyway to NBC, but I don't know. I'm disappointed in his coverage. He really sounds like a top tier hater, which again, there's no need for it. If you got a personal beef or you got a rivalry, fine. That's fine. But don't make him sound like he's just, just a complete negative on defense or on the floor, because that's not the case.
No, and I think he's played much better in these playoffs than he has in playoffs past, because the reason why I didn't think the trade was going to work out originally was defensively in the playoffs. Like in the regular season, I thought they would be actually okay, but in the playoffs, I just didn't think that with the way people switch in today's game and they hunt matchups, I didn't think Rudy Gobert being able to switch out on these guards was going to be, you were going to be able to play him and Cat, because Cat's not the greatest defender either. But to both of their credit, Rudy Gobert has done as good of a job as you can on the MVP 3 times over. Or he's a 3-time MVP, a guy who's going to win an MVP probably within the next 2 years in Luka Doncic, and a guy in Kyrie who we argue may have the biggest bag of all time. Like, he's done what he can do on those guys, and they're not sending help for him. Like, what are you going to do on those guys? No one's doing anything on those guys. I don't care who you are. Like, at some point, those guys are just that great. And, I mean, we saw what Ant was having to deal with early on. He was having to get oxygen after game 1. And then Karl Anthony Towns, to your credit, as you were saying, or to his credit, as you were saying, has put a lot of effort in defensively. He was probably the best defender on Jokic throughout that series, made it tough on him. He's played hard, got rebounds. Even though his shot isn't falling, he is not withering away and just going in the corner and hiding. So to both of their credits, they've definitely played much better. And Rudy Gobert, I don't think you can play him off the floor. I do think sometimes it is tough just because you will find him in matchups, and he's not like Anthony Davis or Wemby where he can slide with the guy on the outside. It's the only reason why the 4 defensive player of the years feel weird, just because you're like,
and you would think
he's the best player in the league, defensive player in the league. But again, I think he's played well, and I don't think you take anything from him. He's done everything he possibly could do with the situation he's been in.
I think he's even sliding well with the perimeter players like Luka and Kyrie. You can't really stay with, but I mean that game winner, he had a good contest on him. It's just Luka Doncic. You can even argue Luka got away with a little 2-step on that 3-point shot, but I mean,
his 2-step.
Think about Rudy Gobert. Like he's known. I think he has a 7'9" wingspan, right? So if you've already got him at like a 75% contest rate, like obviously he's not playing 100% defense on Luka. Luka's always going to have the advantage. But if you're at least already forcing Luka or Kyrie into a tough shot with Gobert on him, because it's not like they're just blowing by him, right? He's getting a lot of contested jump shots. If you send someone else over with 2, 3, 4 on the clock with Rudy Gobert's long arms on you, that should be a problem for you. So for me, really, it's schematic stuff with Chris Finch and the Timberwolves.
You just gotta you have Gobert on, send late help, as you were saying, send a soft double late, make the ball swing, so you have to take a lightly contested shot at the end of the shot clock, and you live with the results of Derrick Jones Jr., PJ Washington, Green on the outside, or Gafford and Lively having to take like 8-foot hooks. Like you deal with those, so you don't let Luka just go one-on-one on whoever.
Yeah. And I do think, just to go back to that Nugget series, I mean, we see that they're probably a player short or even a Michael Porter Jr. average series short of winning that series. Yep. But, they have to be kicking themselves. The Nuggets have to be kicking themselves because even if you get some, again, Michael Porter Jr. better games or maybe some Jamal Murray better games, I think they win that series.
Just a better second half in Game 7.
Really?
They could have had whatever. Right? They were up 20.
It seems like if they played that series 50 times that, maybe the Nuggets win that series 30 out of the 50 times. Mm-hmm. Like, I do think they are the better team and that the Wolves are just a tough matchup for them with their perimeter defense.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But, same thing here. Styles make fights. It's weird because you really don't feel like the Mavs are much better than the Nuggets offensively. It just seems like they can maybe handle that. Yeah, maybe they handle that backcourt pressure from Jaden McDaniels and Anthony Edwards a little better. With Kyrie's craftiness and with Luka's strength. Maybe the difference with just Jamal Murray being a little bit hurt or not being able to get to his spots. But the Nuggets really do got to be kicking themselves because I think they would have beat the Mavs. And at least I think we would have got a 6-7 game series out of this if it was Nuggets Mavericks. But let's flip over to the other series. Let's talk about the Celtics Pacers real quick. Not much to talk about. I said it was going to be a very entertaining 5-game series. 3 games in, Pacers have lost their best player. And we got 3 really good games, actually. Mm-hmm. So it's been entertaining, but it's probably going to end tomorrow, which is unfortunate. I'm assuming Halliburton's not playing. I haven't seen anything about it. I don't know if you have. I'm just going to assume he's not playing.
I wouldn't play him at this point. Like, just let him rest.
No point if he's re-injured that hamstring. Just sucks. I'm just very disappointed. Not only this game, Celtics, let's assume they win tomorrow. Okay. Yeah. And let's assume that we've said it's probably going to end in 5. Let's say it ends in 5 then. We get Game 4 on Tuesday. Game 5 would be Thursday. Let's say it ends there. We get a whole week before we even get a finals game. It's not like it would start on Sunday just because it ended on Thursday. We'll have to then wait from Thursday to Thursday. And by the way, if the Mavs do sweep, like you think they got a good chance of, then we're waiting over a week for a finals game. Don't love it. And if that's the case, we better get 7 games. Yeah. All triple OT games in the finals, the way this is going.
Yes.
What do you think of the Celtics Pacers series? Celtics obviously up 3-0.
I like it. I actually talked on a Believe show earlier today. I shouted you out on it, by the way, because I was talking about how your comments on what I said about Tatum. And I was like, from that point, Tatum's been averaging like 31, 10, and 6. He's been playing very well. Like, he's been just doing kind of what you would expect Tatum to be doing. One thing that has got me, that's bothered me, is this whole Jaylen. I don't know if you saw Kendrick Perkins say that Jaylen Brown's the best player on the Celtics. Don't know if you.
I'll talk about Kendrick. Keep going. I'll talk about Kendrick.
Okay, so we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that later. Okay, because that bothers me to no end. But I ranted on there. I'm gonna do it here too because this is my platform. But yeah. Otherwise, I think the Pacers have done everything you can. They obviously butchered the end of, I believe, Game 1. They obviously butchered the end of Game 1. The pass in, Jaylen Brown hits the shot in the corner, shot up top. The series could be different if that happens. Obviously, you never know what happens. Game 2 was entertaining and close, but I think the Pacers have played as well as you can play being down 0-3. I mean, them and the Timberwolves both have played. It's been 6 close games in both teams. The winning teams have just won all 6 games total. So there have been well-played basketball games, moments here, moments there, but I've never been like, let me just turn this thing off. This is not even a game. And kudos to Boston because they do this thing every series, it seems like, at one point where they just chalk it up and like, we're going to probably win. We'll just let it go. Game 2s in first and second series has been kind of like they play hard. The other team gets really hot, and they kind of do their lackadaisical thing early and then late try to pull it back. They're able to pull it back, and they played very well in the second half against Indiana. I understand Indiana didn't have Halliburton, but Nembhard was going off. Siakam had a very good game. Miles Turner was a little hit or miss, but like overall, the Pacers played a really good game, and it came down to Drew Holiday making big plays at the end. Jayson Tatum obviously making big plays. Jaylen Brown made shots when he needed to. Derek White got going a little bit in the second half. So it was a good win for the Celtics and definitely good just to kind of end it. Not have to be like, if Halliburton comes back, maybe they can make it 6 games or something like that. Just end it, put it away, and then hopefully they put it away to get as much rest as possible for next Thursday's finals game.
Indeed. I mean, Game 1 was a classic.
Yeah.
Game 1
absolutely.
was a classic. It was
Absolutely.
a great game. I mean, that was really the Pacers' chance to really make this a long series.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think if they still had Halliburton, they'd still be in the series as far as maybe a 5-game series. But that was really their chance to make it a 6-game series and on. You know, that was really the one where the Celtics maybe didn't match their intensity early on. And, you know, they brought it back. Obviously, they have an advantage in that series where they, you know, even if the game is fast paced and even if the Pacers are getting to their spots late game, Celtics can get stops. They can switch everything. They're extremely versatile. And, you know, they steal Game 1 in OT. Game 2, obviously, thought Celtics were winning that no matter what, whether it was close, whether it was a blowout. Celtics are probably not going to give you one at home, especially after, you know, Game 1 being so close and not being the one to steal.
Mm-hmm.
And then Game 3 yesterday, down 18. Pacers really just giving them their best shot, especially without Halliburton. And the Celtics did some grown man shit. They went and closed the game, got stops late, got it from everybody, whether it was Tatum in the mid post, really just playing a little bit of bully ball, whether it was Derek White, Drew Holiday's had a fantastic series, had a good ending to the last series as well. Horford, I think he got 7 threes yesterday. Jalen's obviously been playing great. Just a total team effort. That was a great, underrated. I don't think it's talked about enough. The pass Jayson Tatum had to Al Horford in the corner. Like drew 3 at the rim and just laid it off. That's a tough pass to see. And it was a no-look pass, and he just hit Horford perfectly. He hits the 3. And then obviously Boston closes it out. Kendrick Perkins, I don't take anything I hear from anybody that's an ESPN media member seriously, especially if they're a former player. Not that this is directly, I mean, it is sort of related. They're different networks. But Paul Pierce, he was on ESPN previously.
He's known,
and he was known for hot takes on that show. And I don't know if you've seen, I'm sure you've seen the clips, Keenan. He has his own podcast, but he also has a podcast with Kevin Garnett. And it's some of the best basketball talk you can have anywhere. They are, without a doubt, to me, the best player podcast as far as really talking about hoops, really talking about X's and O's, and just the ins and outs of the game, whether it's in season, the off season, just any detail of being a professional basketball player, especially being a star. Obviously, they're two Hall of Famers, right? And Paul Pierce was nothing like how he was on ESPN. And like you said, now he's on FS1, and you see it now. He's starting to up the hot takes again. He's got crazier stuff to say on FS1 because obviously the producers are telling him to do so. So anything Kendrick Perkins says on ESPN, I take with 7 grains of salt. Like, it's just like whatever Kendrick Perkins. Also, by the way, he will sometimes do booth. He'll do color commentary with Brian Scalabrine and formerly Mike Gorman, who's now going to go into retirement. But I don't know if he did it this season. I didn't catch a lot of games from the Celtics on their main network, but I know in the past he did color commentary, and it was not nearly as hot takey. It wasn't nearly as, positive or negative or black and white. Like, he was actually pretty fun and great with Scal on the broadcast. It was much different than how he is on ESPN. So anything he says, like that Jaylen Brown opinion, whatever you want to call that shit, I take with a huge grain of salt. Like, he's clearly being told to say something like that. And again, this is why I wish ESPN would just relinquish their NBA rights. I've read that they asked for less games. They will still get the finals, but they will get less games in the regular season. I believe less games in the playoffs. And in the end, we're not going to get TNT. We're not going to get Inside the NBA. We'll probably get it on a different network. We're going to get NBC, which is great. But if there was a way for us to get NBC and TNT, I think your basketball coverage would be top tier. The fact that ESPN is still involved, and that's the type of shit they put out routinely, whether it's former players, whether it's JJ Redick, he said some things that I think are crazy. And again, you see him much different on the podcast. You see him,
I like JJ
much
Redick's,
much
I
more
like JJ
nuanced
Redick's
on his podcast, right? So, the fact that ESPN really just puts out stuff for Twitter, stuff for Instagram, stuff for TikTok, for that, that to be their market ability compared to what they used to be, it's disappointing. It's very disappointing. So I don't really listen to anything Perk says, which is unfortunate because he really could be an entertaining, whether it's a talking head or a media member in general. He can be entertaining. He's shown the ability for that. I really, like I said, I like his color commentary, but in the ESPN booth and, in studio, not my cup of tea.
That's fair. And I don't disagree with your take on that at all when it comes to that aspect of it. When you hear things like that, it just upsets me because then, there's a part of the population that's going to roll with it. And
just for the sake of rolling with it too, which is fine.
Just for the sake of rolling with it. And then there's a few people out there who actually believe it. And it would have been
okay, Keenan, maybe 2 or 3 years ago after the finals when they lost, when Jaylen did outplay Jayson.
Sure.
That's fair. Since then, Tatum's, I think, made 2 All-NBA first teams.
He's the 3 straight All-NBA first team. Jaylen Brown's made 1 second team, and that was last season. This year,
we got the 51. We got the 51-point Game 7 from Tatum.
And 2 years ago, we had 2 years ago, we've had the 46-point game against Giannis. I completely understand if you think maybe Jaylen Brown was snubbed from the 3rd team. Cool. Everyone's always going to feel there's a snub. I would have probably taken off Devin Booker and put Jaylen Brown myself. But that means he's a top 15 player at best this season. No one's switching him with Tatum on the first team. No one is putting him on the first. He's not better than Jayson Tatum. This year, Jaylen Brown is putting up, I believe, 25, 5 and 3, 54% from the floor, over 40 from 3, only 64 from the line. That's obviously very good stats, clearly. Jayson Tatum in a quote-unquote downtime and when he's not playing up to par is putting up 26, 10, and 6 throughout the entirety of the playoffs. He is just better than Jaylen Brown, it's fine. He gets more defensive attention. He's a better passer. He's a better rebounder. They're pretty much the same level of defender. They're both very good defensively. And then Jaylen Brown just is aggressive. He's a little bit more aggressive.
I'm even fine if Perk, and this is just my guess on how it happened. I'm gonna guess Perk went into like their production meetings and was like, Jaylen Brown is outplaying Jayson Tatum in these playoffs. That's a correct statement. Up until these last couple games, because Tatum's been the man in this series, but up until game 1 of this series, Jaylen Brown was probably the better player. He was probably outplaying Jayson Tatum. So I'm guessing maybe Perk said that in the production meeting, and they were kind of like, "Can you up the spice level a little bit? Can you make that take a little bit hotter?" And then that's how you get to Jaylen Brown's better than Jayson Tatum. There's no point in saying that. There's no point in causing the division. We lived through that once upon a time, or with Westbrook and Durant, where they couldn't have been happier as teammates. I mean, obviously Durant left, but overall, it wasn't real frustration from them. They got along well, and the media constantly tried to divide them. Pretty much their entire tenure.
I would say Skip.
Yeah, it did. And to point out Russell Westbrook's shot selection, that's fair. That was really always that's what started this. But people really try to make it a Kobe and Shaq thing with those two when it wasn't there. So I don't know. Media can certainly be a gift and a curse.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of great media out there. Like, if you listen, and that's the popularity of a lot of these people's podcasts. Like, I love listening to Zach Lowe on his podcast. He has a lot of nuanced basketball conversations where he breaks things down. But, like, when you're in an ESPN format, when you're in an FS1 format, a lot of these shows, like ESPN First Take A Block, you've got 20 minutes. You've got 3 to 4 people talking. So within that, you've got probably 3 to 5 minutes of saying what you want to say, where obviously like we get a podcast to where we can kind of break things down, and a conversation that should be 20 minutes, we can make 20 minutes instead of having to make a conversation 20 minutes, 5 minutes. So we say things that are like clickbaitish. So you obviously get the views, get the reactions and things like that for it. So like, I understand like mentally ESPN does it for the ratings and obviously all that, but it doesn't actually for the people like you and I who want to have true, honest basketball conversation. I mean, a lot of it's just hypothetical. I mean, hypothetical is one of our podcast names because like we just love the hypotheticals. We love the aspects like, oh, if this happens and this, or if that happens, breaking down the game, actually having fun conversation. And then when you say things like, Jaylen Brown is better than Jayson Tatum because Jaylen Brown right now is having a little bit better of a playoff run than Jayson Tatum. It's ridiculous. And then like you listen to say Stephen A. Smith on things and you're like, okay, do you really watch? Like a lot of these people, it's like, are you really watching in full? Like, I understand you guys have so much to cover, but like, you are not really watching all that much stuff, but you still get like all NBA votes. That's what gets crazy to me. Like, it makes sense when he was a beat writer for the Philadelphia 76ers and going around, and he was just around the locker room in the game. But, like, when I just don't know. I get your grandfathered into it, but I think, like, that can kind of skew moving forward, can skew things and, like, awards and everything. And that means something to me. I don't know.
Well,
my thing is, that's a little
my thing is,
tangent.
if we want to get into this media discussion, which I want to say often do, but definitely get into from time to time. When it comes to, let's go to Stephen A. Like you said, he definitely deserves an MVP vote. My problem with the media and the awards is, let me stick to Stephen A. again. All right. He's probably not watching Mavericks versus Hornets on League Pass in February. He's probably not watching that. He's definitely watching all the national TV games. Mm-hmm. So he's doing it from that perspective. Because, yeah, Stephen A is probably the busiest man in sports business as far as media goes, right? So, I mean, he's probably focusing on stars more than he is like the nitty gritty games, which is fine. That's great. My problem is, and I haven't heard it as much from him. I would say it's in totality media, is you hear a lot of guys let you know they have votes, and it seems like throughout the year, and I've seen this more, I'd say, across the last 5 to 7 years than ever before, where everyone's talking about who they're voting for or where they're leaning. And it seems like by February, you get this consensus of who's the MVP. And everyone's talking about,
Yeah.
the probable MVP, this or that, instead of letting, 20 to 30 games still unfold. You know what I mean? Like, people already have leans in January and February. So that's where I've seen the biggest shift as far as media narratives. I mean, there's a ton, but as far as awards go, and I think I've said that on here before, I think people really do start like just showing their leans early. And I don't know why that is. I don't know if it's because they made voting public since the whole Melo LeBron unanimous MVP thing,
Yeah.
but that's one place I've seen it grow differently. What was your other point I wanted to respond to? Sorry, you said a lot. So what was your earlier point before that had to do with ESPN?
I was talking about how you have like an A block that's much shorter, so you don't have the time to.
Yeah. First take culture. Well, I've said a lot on that. I've said a lot. I don't have too much to add to first take culture other than it's been incredibly toxic for especially the NBA.
Also,
I do.
Did you see that Sabonis got a all defensive first team vote? All NBA defensive first team vote.
I did not see that. Clearly,
What
someone
are we
just
doing?
like threw it. Clearly, someone just threw it in there just because.
Garcia Ocha gave Sabonis a fourth in MVP and a first team all defense vote and an all NBA first team vote. What are we doing?
Clearly, he's someone who works for the Kings.
And if we're gonna do that, then why are we? Sorry, these are the all NBA things and everything. I mean, obviously, I went through a top 15 MVPs of the since the merger, and just like I love lists and everything like that. These things just bother me because I don't want. I mean, not that this one vote matters, but I just don't like it when you're right talking about the MVP constantly. So it's like, man, Jokic had the award. Literally, the moment Embiid went down, Jokic had the award. Did the rest of the year, he pretty much just had to do regular Jokic stuff. Just had to do regular, didn't have to do anything crazy. It was either that or like the Celtics would have had to win 70 games or Luka would have had to go on like a end of the year 40 point, 10 assists, like over 6 games, 7 game stretch. Like they would have had to go on a like immaculate stretches to eclipse Jokic. But pretty much when Embiid went down, it was like, Jokic is having a really good season. He's the guy. Giannis just wasn't talked about when Giannis' season was like comparable to any of his other seasons, but like he's someone who should at least been in the conversation. Do I think he should have won it? No. But like he was never even really mentioned. No one really talked about Giannis. Obviously, no one really talked about Shea until towards the end because the Thunder weren't like a hot topic. So I agree with you 100%. But I just that stuff matters to me. Like all NBAs and all that stuff matters to me because I like to talk the history and things.
Yeah. I mean, I think Jokic deserved MVP.
I'm not mad at it. Not mad at it.
Like, I just think like if I had a vote, I said, I would have voted Luka. And my problem is to go with what you said. I think I saw the votes, but my guess is like Jokic won it like decisively over Luka, where I think it probably should have been a really close race.
Jokic, I don't think Luka was even second. I think Luka was third behind Shea.
Yeah. And it should have been like a 3-way split between those, like Jokic winning by a narrow margin, especially with SGA finishing ahead of him. I don't know. Jokic deserved it, but I don't know. I'm not going to remember this past season for him. I don't remember Luka's 73-point game. I don't remember Luka's ridiculous stat lines more than I remember Jokic's stat lines.
I think of Shea bringing the Thunder to a 1 seed. Like that's going to come into my mind more than Jokic's just regular Jokic numbers. And I understand that becomes prisoner of how great you are. I mean, we've thought the same thing about LeBron for years, where it was like, LeBron probably has MVP stats and we know he's the best player in the league, but is this the season we're going to remember him for? Like, are we going to remember him for that season? Like, when you think of 2013-14, you think of Kevin Durant, even though LeBron had MVP quality stats that year. So there's those kind of things, which I think it's more so what MVP was, because it's the most valuable player throughout the year and what you remember from that year. So Yeah, but that's my rant on all NBAs and awards and things because that stuff bothers me. All coming from Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown, which clearly, if you gave all 30 GMs a pick, hey, you get Brown or Tatum, 30 you're taking Tatum. That's it.
Most likely. You
So,
never know because
28,
but
90% are taking Jayson Tatum.
The majority would definitely go with Tatum.
90% are taking Jayson Tatum. Sorry.
No, it's just I've mentioned this before. I've gotten into the UFC a great deal over the last 4 years, and it's definitely more and more mainstream by the day. It seems like,
yep.
But
absolutely, I would agree with that.
It almost helps. I mean, we'll be talking Connor a little bit here, I'm sure, because Connor's coming back at the end of June. But if he was a more active fighter, I think you would get more bandwagon casual UFC fans who would really try to make more cases for Connor, where that would be a toxic fan base. And he's just not active enough for it. Like, obviously you still got your fanboys who are, much like the bronzesexuals, as we call them, who will just argue LeBron to the death, even when LeBron's not even a topic. You know what I mean? We got people like that in the UFC, sure. But, yeah, right. But, you're right. How did LeBron get brought up at a UFC topic, right? But it's still a place where you can have a nuanced conversation and you can still talk about fighter to fighter or past fighters and this and that without being like, without trying to tear down past fighters or even try to tear down current fighters. Obviously it's there, but and the NFL is pretty toxic too, but I haven't seen anything nearly as toxic, as NBA fandom. And specifically when it comes to just star players. It's ridiculous. And Keenan, there's player podcasts out there, former player podcasts like Gilbert Arenas. He says some just batshit insane things, much like Kendrick Perkins on ESPN, where you're wondering, like, does he believe this? Is this for clickbait? Is this for views? I saw one the other day. I actually like a lot of what Brandon Jennings says on that podcast, but he said some shit the other day, like, Malik Monk is better than Donovan Mitchell. All Malik Monk needs is Donovan Mitchell minutes. You almost just knocked yourself out on your microphone. But like,
what are we doing here? Are you really?
Brandon Jennings
paid for this.
Brandon Jennings has been in the NBA. Like, he knows, like, if you're not getting minutes, sometimes it is warranted, sometimes it's not. And Malik Monk is getting minutes, but he's not getting Donovan Mitchell minutes. He's not getting Donovan Mitchell opportunities.
Brandon Jennings. That's what Malik Monk is. Pretty much Brandon Jennings, a guy offensively talented, smaller guard who can feel it up at any point. We know what Brandon Jennings could get hot. I think he had 55 as rookie.
Well, I mean,
Monk's or something like that.
Monk's even. If we're talking size, he's bigger than Donovan Mitchell.
He's bigger than Brandon Jennings, but his game's closer to Brandon Jennings than it is Donovan Mitchell. For sure.
But
come on now.
And he's obviously, to some degree, he's not wrong in saying if Malik Monk had Donovan Mitchell's opportunity, he'd probably have close to Donovan Mitchell's numbers. Yeah, he's that explosive of an offensive player. But if he was really Donovan Mitchell or better than Donovan Mitchell, we'd have seen it already. You know what I mean? He's been in the league for 6-7 years now. So
he would have taken over that Kings spot. Like the Kings have given him enough opportunity to where if he was really Donovan Mitchell, he would have made his way from being just a sixth man to a starter to being like one of the focal points of that offense. And they would have a big three. I mean, they have like obviously it's Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox, and then Malik Monk is there. He's a great portion of their team, but he's not Donovan Mitchell. Those things are upset me so much.
I say that to
say these things.
I say that to say, whether it's on ESPN, whether it's me and you on a podcast, whether it's former NBA players on a podcast. Yeah, me and you might say some dumb shit on here. I know I've said my share of dumb shit on here.
Well, I own up
but,
when I say it. If I say it and it happens, yeah.
If you're Gilbert Arenas and you got, X amount of followers and you're saying like he's got a heavy agenda against European players like Jokic and Doncic. And it's like, for what? They're great for the game. They do a lot of great things. There's a lot of great American players like Donovan Mitchell, like Anthony Edwards, obviously, like still LeBron and Durant. And as you mentioned, Tatum and Brown, like, there's enough talent to go around for us to appreciate. And I just don't see the negativity, not only across generations, like hating on Bird, Magic, Michael, Kobe, Tim Duncan. Like, there's so much hate across all generations just to big up a current player, just to big up whoever people want to big up when there's no need for it. Basketball is an incredibly beautiful game. My favorite part of the playoffs, Keenan, and I say this time and time again, is that it resembles 90s and 2000s basketball. You can really evaluate players, I would say, from the late 80s on, as far as contemporary basketball, just from the physicalness, because the physicalness is right there. Yeah, the shooting and the spacing's different. Yeah, the defensive schemes are more sophisticated these days. But, one-on-one basketball, team defense, how you're shifting your defense, how you're guarding a star player, how your star player is doing in the clutch, you'll be able to judge that no matter what in any sport, whether it's the NBA, whether it's the NFL, whether it's the MLB, UFC, boxing, anything. Those things, the playoffs, that's what they're for us to judge, right? Anthony Edwards isn't shooting well. A direct result of that is his team being down 3-0 right now. It's just how it is. Anthony Edwards was playing a little better. Maybe we're at 2-1. Maybe they're up 2-1. We don't know. Jayson Tatum, when he's having a rough series, because his supporting cast is so good, it doesn't really matter. Granted, they would have won those series no matter what. I think Tatum could have missed a couple games and they'd still win those series.
They could be up right now in the Eastern Conference Finals if Tatum hadn't played an entire game in this playoffs.
Right. And last thing, because I know you want to talk, Keenan, but just another thing. People are talking about like, oh, the Celtics, they're going to make the finals and, there's injuries and this and that. Well, all right, look where the Pacers are. Pacers are where they are because of injuries. Bucks had injuries. Knicks had injuries.
The Warriors won their first championship with a guard out every single series. The starting point guard in every series won. Injuries happen. It happens.
Every single playoffs, there's injuries. And last thing I wanted to say, Keenan, I actually wanted to bring this up throughout the postseason. I've not been able to locate this original tweet that I came across. I wish I would have saved it. But this was before the postseason or maybe mid-first round. And I saw the stat of star players. They specifically said star players by injury and percentage of these star players being out by month, right? Went from October up until I think April or May. Basically, the heart of the playoffs, right?
Yep.
And I want to say it started maybe 2017. I don't know when this graph or this chart started, but it went up to last season. And the star players who were out by the time the playoffs started or were in the middle of the playoffs was up to like 35%. That's an insane number. And the chart started at like 17%. So, I mean, I don't know what it is that is causing this much injuries. And it really does seem like it happens more than ever. It almost seems like you can count on 3 or 4 stars being out in the playoffs, which is insane. So I don't know why that trend is, especially with load management, especially with the elimination of back-to-backs. I don't know why more stars are getting injured than ever. It's disappointing, but the Celtics, did they get aided with injury? Of course they did. But guess what? They're down Porzingis as well. And honestly, let's be real. Even if everyone was fully healthy, Celtics would still probably be in this position. Probably wouldn't be against the Pacers, but they'd still be favored to go to the finals out of the East.
They either would have lost in the first round or made it to the finals, because they would have lost to the Heat. If that's the only team I would have beat them in my head, been the only team. They would have lost in the first round, so they'd be right where they are right now. So it would have been one of the two.
One of the two.
And the only team I could really see beating them, just because obviously the Heat for some reason have their number. But all I was going to say was, you were right. I've said dumb things in the past. You said dumb things in the past. Everybody who talks sports and gives hundreds and hundreds of thoughts on sports is going to be wrong and say something that will end up being dumb. The only thing that I hate is when the dumb things aren't authentic. Unless Gilbert Arenas authentically really feels that European players suck and are bad for the game, or I just don't like non-authentic opinions like that. I don't care if Kendrick Perkins truly believes that Jaylen Brown is better than Jayson Tatum. Cool. I don't think he really believes that with all of his heart. Because I think if Jayson Tatum right now, they go to the finals, they play Dallas, and Jayson Tatum averages 32 points a game, 8 rebounds, 6 assists, and he wins finals MVP with a runaway, that he's going to look back on this, and he'll probably even forget he said it. And like you'll act like he never even said it. Like, of course Jayson Tatum's the best player on the Celtics. He did what he was supposed to do, kind of thing. So like that was the only thing that bothers me. But yeah, I do agree with I agree with the overall premise of it, and the NBA. It's unfortunate that injuries happen, but injuries are always going to happen. Do the Celtics have an easy path to the finals for what a finals run could be? They do, but they'll be seeing the Mavericks, and I mean, unless Luka mysteriously gets injured again, they should be playing a very formidable opponent. So, and Derek Lively should be fine by that point because he'll have time to rest up and heal. But unless Luka gets this mysterious knee injury again,
I feel like that was a kiss of death. Now I feel like Kyrie or someone is going to step on someone's foot, like in the next game or game one, and we're going to get a severely sprained ankle from one of them, and then it will be an easier series from one of them.
That's what I was going to say. That's the last thing I was going to say. We were talking about obviously how the UFC, gladly it's not toxic. It has the potential to be possibly with if Conor was to be a mega star again and all of that stuff. I mean, he's still a mega star, but like prominently in the UFC. Obviously, the NFL can get toxic because it's the NFL, but it's such a team game.
They're all toxic. I kind of undersold it. They're all extremely toxic, and they're all worse than they were 10 years ago. But I know what you're saying. The NBA just takes the cake. Like the NBA, no one even touches the NBA as far as toxicity.
No, and my hope in saying that is moving on. I hope the WNBA doesn't get that way because obviously it's growing exponentially. I just hope it doesn't get to the NBA level. That's what I'm saying. Like it's going to get toxic because people are going to be either full Caitlin Clark haters to where like she can't do a thing right, or they're going to be like everything Caitlin Clark does is perfect, and like you guys are just hating, and then you can't have nuance. Like I just want to be able to hear nuanced conversations about the WNBA, but there's going to be so many new faces watching that older players that are in the league, it's like she would never do anything, or she wasn't good at all, or this could never happen, and that's what I don't want, because like right now it's a nice, loving place where we give shine and praise to all the good ones, and I just want to keep giving praise to the good players. This is all I want.
I'll say this: Caitlin Clark, she's already enough of a star and already had the cachet coming in to where she was already going to have those built-in haters. So that's already there.
Of course.
I don't think you're gonna get the toxic WNBA, just like ridiculous shit we see with other sports until we see them officially, and this might be sooner than we think, on the A block or on even the B block, and maybe they already are, of a First Take and FS1 shows like that. When the
WNBA is not.
When we start getting like true WNBA topics of like ridiculous stuff, like like I don't know, Kelsey Plum goes 4 of 13 in a game 6, or I don't know. They're best of 7 in the finals, right? Is everything best of 5?
No, it's still best of 5. What it would be, it would be like in a game 4 up 2-1. Asia Wilson goes 6 of 20. Jackie Young has, and it's like, is Jackie Young better than Asia Wilson, or is Asia Wilson getting carried by Kelsey Plum? And it's like, guys, should
they trade Jackie Young for Kyrie Irving? Should Caitlin Clark sign with the Lakers? That'll definitely be one sooner or later. Would Caitlin Clark help the Lakers at point guard?
Okay, that's the moment.
That's a tailor-made First Take topic. We got to get that one soon. Would Caitlin Clark be an impact player at point guard for the Los Angeles Lakers?
Oh, Molly absolutely. Listen, and what's going to happen here is this. Caitlin Clark's going to have a big game right before the All-Star break. They're going to go on the All-Star break, and she's going to go nuts at the All-Star game from 3 or something like that, or she's going to win the 3-point contest. Is Sabrina and Caitlin Clark a better shooting backcourt than Klay Thompson and Steph Curry? And it's going to be like, guys, can we not? They're really good shooters, but no one's... Are they a better shooting tandem than Steph Curry and Klay Thompson? What?
I'll say one place where the UFC specifically, and I haven't actually seen this much in the NFL. That's where I'll give the NFL credit, is they won't do this position by position. But in weight divisions with the UFC, if anybody is like the current champions on any sort of win streak, they love to bring up the GOAT talk for that weight division.
Yeah.
Excuse me, sorry. So that's where I'd compare it to the NBA, is they really do like to start the GOAT talk pretty early on, depending who the fighter is. But that's just fans. It's not media. UFC media's
that's the biggest thing that upsets me in the media.
UFC media is okay. UFC media seems to be okay, especially on the podcast. I'm sure there is definitely UFC media that's terrible, especially at their press conference days. They have literally just anybody show up to ask questions. So they like actually ban like real media members from their press conferences. It seems like it's a little weird, but the actual media who covers it isn't as toxic and hot takey as like the social media aspect of MMA. And even that's not nearly as bad as the NBA. But yes, Go Talk, that is pushed way too much across all sports. Like I said, the NFL actually does a really good job, aside from Mahomes and Brady. Obviously, we're going to get that for the rest of Mahomes' career, especially on ESPN.
Mahomes already better than Tom Brady?
And FS1.
Patrick Mahomes going to his 7th season. Tom Brady's won a Super Bowl that many times. Not better.
Let me say that. I'll tell you exactly my problem with ESPN. This is going to be my last complaint. This will be my last time sounding like an old ass man for a little bit. But Kelsey and Mahomes are at the game tonight with Hollywood Brown, and I think TNT pans to him twice. Yeah. If that was an ESPN game, Keenan, I'm not kidding. That would have been 7 to 10 different camera shots of Kelsey and Mahomes, and like forced. Kansas City will be facing, I think, they faced the Bengals week 1 or something like that.
Ravens week 1.
Ravens. That's right. They faced Ravens week 1. It would have been like a forced cut of that, a forced, promo of that week 1 game. Just tons of forced promo. If Taylor Swift was front side with Kelsey, my God, I would have probably seen Taylor more than I saw Kyle Anderson. He played 20 minutes. That actually would have overtook the game if Taylor Swift was at the game with Kelsey and Mahomes tonight. But
better backcourt, Travis Kelsey and Taylor Swift, or Ant Edwards and Mike Conley?
It's insanity. Yeah. We still have a few months. I almost just went on a Mahomes, Kelsey, Swift thing, but we got a few months before we can talk about the Chiefs and that whole media culture.
Too. Make sure that's every word's perfect on that one. That's not going anywhere. So we can button that up. Make sure every word's perfect.
But listen, we'll be back later in the week. Hopefully next time we talk, we're still in the middle of a long Western Conference series. Because again, I think if the Celtics do happen to lose tomorrow, there's no way they lose 2 in a row. And if they do, cool, because we'll have more stuff to talk about. But I don't think that's going to happen. I do give it a 10 to 15% chance that this goes to a game 6. Higher chance that it goes for sure to a game 5. I do think the Wolves win the next game. I don't think they get swept. Will this go to a game 6? Again, 10 to 15% chance. I think if the Wolves do win game 4, that we'll get a really great game 5, regardless of winner. I think that would be a classic. Granted, I thought that about game 6 for Denver and T-Wolves for the same reason, and we got an awful game. So who knows? You can't really predict these NBA playoffs anymore. Excuse me. Goddamn. It seems like I keep burping into the mic. So I'm apologizing for all our audio listeners. The video watchers, it'll probably not affect as much, but the audio listeners, sorry for burping into the mic because I don't know. I guess the wings I had earlier getting.
He's nervous. It's okay.
Yeah, right. He's hiccuping all over the place.
He's nervous. But Warner Brothas Podcast. This is Keenan. That was Kyle, of course, as we said. Probably gonna be talking later this week at some point, hopefully, about more games. Follow us on YouTube at Warner Brothas Podcast, Instagram, Warner Brothas Podcast, TikTok, Warner Brothas Podcast. Maybe at some point we'll up our Twitter game. Don't know when that will be, but Warner Brothas Podcast there too. And we'll see you guys.
Like a man.